Ever find yourself in a crowded room, trying to follow just one conversation?
Oh, yeah.
You're experiencing your auditory attention control system in action.
Right.
We're taking a deep dive into some fascinating research
Uh-huh.
that explores how we measure this ability
Yeah.
to focus on sounds while tuning out the rest of the world.
It's a question that's captivated researchers for decades. How do we selectively attend to the sounds that matter?
And we've got excerpts from a recent paper
Okay.
that delves into this very topic.
At the Georgia Institute of Technology School of Psychology, Alexander P. Burgoyne, Dolly T. Seeburger, and Randall W. Engle wanted to understand if attention control is one general superpower, or if we might have separate systems for different senses.
These researchers weren't satisfied with the traditional methods of measuring auditory attention control, so they designed 3 completely new tests.
Interesting.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
They also compared these auditory tests to classic visual attention tests to see if there's a connection between the two.
It's like asking, if you're good at focusing on a conversation at a party, are you also good at ignoring a flashing light while you're trying to read?
Exactly. To understand their approach, the researchers first take us back to the roots of attention research, highlighting those famous dichotic listening experiments.
Imagine wearing headphones and hearing different things in each ear. Your task is to repeat what you hear in one ear while completely ignoring the other. It sounds simple, but it's surprisingly difficult, and it reveals a lot about our ability to filter out auditory distractions.
I remember trying something similar once, and it was mind-boggling how hard it was to just focus on one ear. What did these early experiments tell us?
Well, they showed that people vary widely in their ability to successfully filter out those competing sounds.
Okay.
And some early research hinted at a possible link between this ability and something called working memory capacity.
Working memory. That mental workspace we use to hold and manipulate information.
Right.
So someone with a larger working memory might be better at those cocktail party conversations.
That was the hypothesis, and this new research picks up on that thread, exploring those connections in even greater depth. But they also point out some of the limitations of traditional attention tests, even in the visual realm.
What kind of limitations are we talking about?
Well, let's take the classic Stroop task as an example. You see the word red printed in blue ink, and you have to name the color, not the word. It's harder than it sounds because you have to inhibit that automatic response of reading the word.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. It really messes with your brain.
But those classic tests often ran into issues with speed accuracy trade-offs. Someone might be really fast on the Stroop task but make a ton of mistakes, or they might be super accurate but take forever to respond. It made it difficult to get a clear picture of someone's true attention control abilities.
So how did the researchers in this paper tackle that problem in their new auditory tests?
They came up with a very clever solution called an adaptive response deadline. Imagine a timer that's constantly adjusting based on how well you're doing. If you're getting the answers right quickly, the timer gets shorter, forcing you to respond even faster.
Yeah.
But if you start making mistakes or taking too long, the timer eases up a bit to give you more time.
So it's like a personalized challenge that keeps everyone at a similar level of accuracy.
Exactly. They designed it to keep everyone's accuracy around 75%, so the measure becomes how quickly someone can respond while still maintaining that level of accuracy.
Okay.
It gives a much more precise picture of their auditory attention control abilities.
That's fascinating. So they applied this adaptive deadline to each of their 3 new auditory tests: the auditory Simon, auditory flanker, and auditory Stroop. Let's break those down and see what they're all about.
Absolutely. Let's start with the auditory Simon test. Imagine you're wearing those headphones again, and you hear the word left spoken in your right ear.
Well,
Your task isn't to process the meaning of the word, but rather to focus on where the sound is coming from.
right.
So you would press the key corresponding to your right ear, even though you heard the word left.
Okay, so it's like a spatial challenge mixed with some potentially misleading information.
Right.
I can see how that would really put your auditory attention control to the test. And remember, that adaptive deadline is constantly adjusting based on your performance, making it increasingly challenging.
Precisely. Now let's move on to the auditory flanker test. This one is all about honing in on a central sound while ignoring competing sounds on either side.
Okay.
Imagine trying to listen to a voice saying bat or bed right in the center of your headphones, but then you also hear other words being spoken in each ear, kind of like those distracting conversations at a party.
Ah, so you've got to really laser focus on that center voice and block out those flanking sounds. It's like a real-life test of your ability to tune out distractions.
Exactly. And just like with the auditory Simon test, the adaptive deadline keeps things interesting. The faster you get at correctly identifying bat or bed amidst those flanking sounds, the less time you'll have to respond. Now, for the final test, we have the auditory Stroop, which, as you might guess, has some similarities to the classic visual Stroop task.
I'm intrigued. How did they translate that color-word conflict into the auditory realm?
Instead of colors and words, this time it's about conflicting voices and words. For example, you might hear the word mother spoken in a man's voice. Your task is to press the key for female, even though the voice is male.
Oh, that's sneaky. So you really have to focus on the meaning of the word and ignore that distracting gender cue from the voice.
Precisely. And of course, that adaptive deadline is there, making sure you're constantly challenged.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. All three of these auditory tests are cleverly designed to create conflict, forcing you to actively control your attention to respond correctly. But the big question is, how did people perform on these tests compared to the visual ones? And what does that tell us about this idea of a general attention control ability?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and we'll dive into those findings right after.
Wait, don't break this down. Let's keep going.
Okay, then. Let's explore the results of this study.
Perfect. I'm on the edge of my seat.
So remember how we talked about those early dichotic listening experiments hinting at a connection between attention control and working memory?
Uh-huh.
Well, this new research digs deeper into that relationship
Yeah.
and uncovers some fascinating insights.
Okay. Spill the beans. What do they discover?
One of the most compelling findings was that performance on the auditory attention tests was significantly correlated with performance on visual attention tests, even after accounting for processing speed.
Wow. So even if you factor out how quickly someone processes information in general, there's still a link between their ability to control their attention in both the auditory and visual domains. That's pretty remarkable.
It is, and it suggests that there's some kind of general attention control factor at play, something that transcends the specific senses involved.
So there is a unifying force when it comes to attention control. Does that mean if you're great at focusing on a conversation at a noisy party, you're also going to be amazing at tuning out visual distractions while you're trying to read?
Well, it's not quite that straightforward. While this general attention control factor provides a foundation,
Okay.
the researchers also found some interesting modality-specific nuances.
Ah, there's always a twist. What kind of nuances are we talking about?
For example, auditory attention control turned out to be a particularly strong predictor of performance on, you guessed it, the dichotic listening task.
Makes sense that being skilled at focusing on one auditory stream while filtering out another would be especially helpful in that scenario. It's like that cocktail party all over again.
Exactly. On the other hand, visual attention control was a better predictor of performance on a complex visual multitasking test.
So it's like having a base level of fitness that benefits all sports, but then certain sports might require specific muscle groups or skills that give you an extra edge.
That's a great analogy. There's this core attentional ability, but it interacts with different types of information in unique ways.
So what does all of this mean for me, the listener, as I navigate a world that seems determined to distract me at every turn?
Well, this research emphasizes the importance of understanding our individual strengths and weaknesses when it comes to attention control. If you find yourself easily distracted by visual clutter, creating a minimalist workspace might be beneficial. If you struggle more with auditory distractions, noise-canceling headphones could be your new best friend.
It's about recognizing those patterns in ourselves and finding strategies that work for our specific needs. So someone who excels at focusing on conversations might naturally gravitate towards collaborative work environments, while someone who's easily distracted by noise might prefer a quiet, solitary space. It's about playing to our strengths.
Exactly. And this understanding can empower us to create environments that support our cognitive success.
This research is really eye-opening. I'm curious, though, what are some of the unanswered questions that you think this research raises?
Well, one question that comes to mind is how much of these individual differences in attention control are fixed versus flexible? Can we train ourselves to become better at filtering out specific types of distractions, or are we largely stuck with the attentional profiles we have?
That's a fascinating question. It makes me think about those brain training games that claim to boost your attention and focus. Is there any scientific evidence to support those claims?
Well, that's a whole other deep dive. But to
Mhm.
address your question, this particular study didn't delve into the realm of brain training. Their focus was on measuring and understanding these individual differences in attention control, not on interventions or training programs.
Fair enough. So, what are some of the other avenues for future research that you think this study opens up?
One area that I find particularly intriguing is the developmental aspect. How do these individual differences in attention control emerge over time? What role do genetics and early experiences play in shaping our attentional profiles?
And how do these differences affect learning and performance in different contexts, like school or the workplace?
Exactly. There are so many potential applications for this research, and it really highlights the importance of understanding these individual variations in attention control. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
This deep dive has been truly enlightening. It's given me a whole new perspective on my own attentional strengths and weaknesses.
Me too. It underscores the importance of not only understanding those patterns in ourselves, but also recognizing and respecting those differences in others.
Absolutely. So, listeners, the next time you find yourself struggling to focus amidst a sea of distractions, remember what we've explored today. It's not just about willpower or mental toughness, it's about recognizing the complexities of your attention system, appreciating those unique strengths and weaknesses, and creating an environment that supports your cognitive success. And remember, there's still so much we're learning about this fascinating ability that allows us to navigate the world around us.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just our own personal experiences. Recognizing and respecting those differences in others can lead to more effective communication and collaboration in all aspects of life.
So, to wrap things up, listeners, the next time you find yourself struggling to focus amidst a sea of distractions, remember what we've uncovered today. It's not simply a matter of willpower. It's about understanding the complexities of your attention system, those strengths, those weaknesses, and creating an environment that truly supports your cognitive success.